And here we are, at the final world. I don't like to discuss this part, and it still bothers me very much. But it's something I have to do, so that I can put this behind me. People deserve to know. At this point I was well aware of the game's unnatural nature, but Zenith was different than the other worlds. While the others were certainly strange and sometimes frightening, the world of Zenith was a nightmare. And I didn't have to go any farther than the board screen for an indication that something was wrong with Zenith. The first thing I noticed was the blood-red texture of the board, and the music was an eerie whistling tune. I noticed that I had Solomon and Anguirus back, and I felt better for a second. Then I scrolled over to the right to see who the enemies would be this time. This time it was Destroya and Ghidorah, but judging from the icon it was a different Ghidorah than the original, standing on the ground instead of flying. The grotesquely detailed pinkish-red icon also caught my eye. Couldn't tell what it was supposed to be, and I was afraid to find out. Going back to my side of the board, I decided there wasn't much choice than to do my usual routine, in going to the quiz level before doing anything else. However, I was not ready for what had happened. Well, I jumped back when this appeared, accompanied by a terribly distorted version of the password theme. It looked as if Faith had fallen victim to some terrible glitch. Is this what he meant by, "Will you miss me"? Did he know this would happen? My thoughts were stopped short as I noticed the screen was glitching and seemingly falling apart while I was inactive, so I quickly rushed out. When I got back to the board, I somehow had gained a new monster. I hadn't been asked if I wanted one. I tried to select it, and this happened. What the hell is going on? The game's behavior was scaring me, and I haven't even started the levels yet. I couldn't understand why I was randomly given a new character, then denied use of it, but for the time being, there was little that could be done. I viewed the last TV screen. No animation, no music, dead. Every instinct I had was telling me to stop playing, to just turn the game off, and something in the game itself might have been trying to warn me as to just how horrible this last world was. But then, every single stretch of the way, I was compelled to give up. I couldn't do that now. On the last world, besides, after taunting me with the memories of Melissa, I felt the game owed me some answers. I noticed that the first level was a red temple, so at least I would be familiar with the level graphics, if nothing else. And I went in with Godzilla, the monster I was most familiar with. Godzilla had been shrunk. The level and score meters had vanished, and the blue temple statue faces were back. The music was similar to the blue temple also. Strange, haunting vocalizations. I tried to get my spirits up by thinking, well, if this level is like the blue temple, then that might mean there are no enemies to deal with. How wrong I was. After a short walk, all the statues' eyes started glowing, and a pack of beasts from the Shadow Labyrinth came charging into me. Since they were coming from the right of the screen, I had to fight my whole way through them. This battle greatly tested my reflexes, but thanks to the speed, I plowed through the beasts. They gave off health power-ups after dying, which helped recover the damage they had given me. However, as I continued through the hallway, the statue's glowing eyes, again, summoned another wave of monsters. It seemed to be the same number of them, but I was less prepared this time, and it took more damage. I'd gone through 4 of these waves until I reached the end of the hall, where I heat-beamed the last of the monsters off the edge into an abyss. At first, it seemed I had reached a dead end, but after the statue's eyes stopped glowing, a brick path slowly appeared before me. I followed the path, which kept moving towards the right until it stopped at the wall, where I was to go vertically by jumping up the ledges. Along the way I encountered new creatures and some sort of strange shrine, which had a statue of the Hell Beast and some other creature I don't recognize. As I went through, the path took a downward direction. I had to carefully aim my jumps to avoid the enemies, which were plentiful in this part of the stage. They didn't have many attacks, but they could easily shove you over the edge off a platform. At the end of this tunnel, there were a few small platforms floating above nothingness. I landed on one towards the left of the screen, and then something came down from above. It looked like a blue angel from the graveyard, except now it was red, and it had a skull's face. Any of the pleasant feelings I had with the blue angel were not present with this red one. And it hovered around. Its eye sockets started glowing just like the statues, summoning monsters to attack me. Surely this was not the same benevolent being I had encountered before. This must have been some kind of imposter. The battle was nerve-wracking, as I started off with nearly half my health and had to deal with multiple opponents, as well as the threat of gravity to make things even worse. As the red angel took damage, some of the panels fell until only 3 remained, but my luck had not run out. Just when I thought it was over, I struck the red angel one more time, and it turned out one last hit was all he could take. Just as the red angel completely disintegrated, the game instantly went back to the Zenith board. I moved Mothra over to the nearest stage from the red temple, which seemed to be a garbled mess of the letters spelling kill, and began playing. As suspected, level graphics were made of jumbled letters, and Mothra, just like Godzilla, was shrunk to half her size. I began to suspect that all the Zenith levels would be like this. The background music was terrible, like if someone put all the sounds that an NES was capable of making into a blender, and then piecing them back together into a, quote, song. I had to turn the volume down because of it. Playing as Mothra made avoiding the enemies easier, but they were nonetheless determined to get at me. The first enemies I saw were headless Gigants, and later on were hybrid monsters pieced together from the previous bosses, like a Biollante-headed thing with a Titanosaurus body. 5 minutes had gone by as I didn't see anything new, and the level shifted into another segment. The music had changed from the loud, annoying beeps into something far more ambient and menacing. The level graphics also changed, now looking a blood-drenched junkyard. The way everything in this level was red made it sickening to look at. The enemies multiplied in number, never ceasing to follow after me, and became harder and harder to avoid. At the end of the level, the situation reached a climax as the swarms of monsters fused together into one enormous, terrifying hybrid. Once I had gotten over the initial shock, I discovered the way to destroy this thing, constantly shooting I-beams at the Hedorah clusters that formed its head. If you attacked anywhere else, it would regenerate the damage. Even with that knowledge, this was an extremely difficult fight. I'd say it was as hard as fighting the Moon Beast was, and if not harder. Its most common attack was lunging forward with its arms covered in Gigan saws and blades. If they touched it would instantly drain your health. When it was over, the remaining monsters collapsed into a heap. Then, they and the ground below them started to disintegrate and sink towards the very bottom of the screen. When I came back to the board, I thought to myself, so far the game has been putting the easiest levels first. If that's the case, how bad will the rest of Zenith be?